Cheers and salutations, my fellow Romans. It is with a heavy heart that we here at Americans Learn need to inform you about the death of the great Aurelian. Now, in our video that we played the last time, the noble hero, the one of prophecy to unite the world and restore it, was horrifically betrayed by his own guard. Now, if that video gets 500 likes, we will watch a whole series dedicated to Aurelian and see his feats of strength and glory and more. But unfortunately, now that Aurelian is gone, the empire looks for leadership and hope. The world is not doomed yet. Rome still can be great. And perhaps maybe there is another person, someone who is also great, but alas, the story of Aurelian will forever live on. Shout out to Dovahati. Support the original content creator. The original link to this video is in the description box below. Never forget Aurelian. And let us now continue with Diocletian's Tetrarchy? Oh, I hope that's not splitting up the empire. That's not good. That's not good for anybody. R.I.P. Aurelian. From the window to the wall.
No one told you life was gonna be this way. Your job's a joke, you broke. Your love life's the old way. It's like you're always stuck in second gear.
Hold on. Sorry we let you down, sir. We will avenge you. I don't know how we're going to do it, but we're going to get revenge for your soul.
It's like you're always stuck in second gear. When it hasn't been your day, week, your month, even your year. But I'll be there for you. I'll be there for you. Like I've been there.
Constantius. Huh. That's a good name. But maybe it needs a little more spice. If he has a son, it should be close to that, but I don't know. I'm gonna go for the word Constantine. That's a better name. But hey, no, I can't argue with the chin, you know. Constantius. It's a good name, but it could be better. That'd be a hell of a name for a city, though. What do I know? I'm probably wrong about it. Oh. I see him.
The restorer of the world was betrayed.
No!
After saving the empire from decades of civil war and barbarian invasions, Aurelian's death was mourned by all.
No!
When the catastrophe was relayed to the legions, they were consumed with the most anguished sorrow and direst anger. All of Aurelian's assassins were then rounded up.
Beat them within an inch of their lives! I mean, they must face trial and legal documentation and given rights. Beat them with an inch of their lives. And then we'll find more ways to hurt them. They don't get to die just yet. I mean, they should be treated properly in the legal system.
And subjected to the worst tortures known to man. They then sent word to Rome, expressing that none of the officers felt worthy enough to follow on Aurelian's steps. Depression and rage the only thing in their minds. The Senate, in turn, was horrified at the prospect of having to elect the next emperor, given who he would have to live up to. So they begged the legions to choose one for them, which they refused. They begged again, were refused again, and this back and forth continued for months. And as it did, during the Interregnum, Aurelian's wife, Oppia Severina, ruled Rome.
Rule with a wise heart, noble woman.
The first and only empress of the whole Roman Empire. Did I say that she had a daughter of Aurelian? Because she did. Not that it will be relevant, I assure you. So what can we say about our little Augusta over here? Well, for starters, she wasn't a Severan. Forget the last name. Instead, she was related to Trajan's line, as the first name implies. She was a Romano-Dacian survivor too, so if a woman ever deserved to rule Rome, Oppia's as good as it gets. And what did Oppia do with all of her power? Absolutely fuck all, refusing to take advantage of her husband's death and just printing coins for fun while waiting for a successor to be chosen. So after 8 months of back
Oh, hey, look, they're dancing on the Senate. Cool.
and forth, the Senate relented and decided to pull a Nerva and elect a highly capable old geezer as emperor, Marcus Tacitus, a full-blooded descendant of the good historian. Taken by surprise with the elevation, Tacitus gave a fine speech, granting the senators lots of power to appease their egos. Quite fitting, as
Ugh, stupid Senate.
he would be the last emperor they ever elected into power. Oppia and her daughter then voluntarily abdicated and vanished from the history book.
No!
Tacitus
Don't go!
then traveled to Moesia to meet the legions, saw that the legionaries were still torturing Aurelian's assassins
Good. Good. Torture. Torture them.
and decided to just ease tensions and order their executions. Meanwhile,
You're being too nice.
word of Aurelian's death reached the Germs, who used this chance to remind everyone that the crisis of the 3rd century was still ongoing. Tacitus then sent his half-brother and Praetorian prefect, Florianus, to go clean up the Danube from 99% of the Germs. And to help him rule, Tacitus appointed the legate Probus as governor of the eastern provinces. For after a lifetime of war in the service of Aurelian, including retaking Egypt from Zenobia, Probus had become among the best generals of the time. While touring the east, Tacitus heard that the breach of the Limes Germanicus allowed the Germans to invade Gaul again. Alemanni, Franks, Goths, Vandals, Burgundians, every virus
Ugh. Oh, I told you, nothing good ever comes from Germania. Nothing.
species. But before he could respond, he caught a very weird illness. It basically drove him mad, making him name all 12 months of the year in his honor, and then dying right after. Deja vu. And as the emperor's half-brother, and having the most legions at hand, Florianus usurped power and acclaimed himself emperor, to the detriment of Gaul. But he didn't really have the legions. In the hearts of every veteran, only those among Aurelian's officer corps deserved to wear the purple. And among those, Probus currently held the highest rank, so it was him they recognized as Augustus. Florianus didn't relent though, and marched east to face Probus.
No!
Which proved to be his undoing. Probus's reputation was that of a veteran that won victories in every corner of the empire, and when he faced him in Cilicia, he used his experience to lock Florianus's bigger army at the hot climate of the Sicilian gates. With the legions being tortured by the harsh climate, they just killed the usurper Florianus
Yes!
and joined up with Probus, like they wanted to. And after being recognized by the Senate, Probus defended Moesia against another Gothic invasion, crushing them so hard that they begged for a peace treaty.
Don't trust them.
He then marched to Gaul and began brutally slaughtering all Germanic invaders. As he fought, he pushed them back to the Rhine, recovering the lost forts of the border and killing as many barbarians as possible. By the end of the campaign,
Yes.
he spared the world of 400,000 Germans,
Good. Great job!
and was acclaimed both Germanicus and Gothicus Maximus. Sadly, the border regions of the Rhine had been severely depopulated by the constant barbarian onslaught, so Probus figured on settling some Germans as civilians in the most affected areas.
No, listen. Pleb, impregnate these beasts so the germ genes dilute. Listen, man, they're gonna take advantage of him. His precious Roman seed, it cannot be wasted. You don't understand. Look at him. They're gonna hurt him. They're going to hurt him.
Hoping they would integrate with the local populace.
No.
Meanwhile, Diocles was serving in Gaul as well, alongside his fellow officer, Galerius, and seeing him rising through the ranks, he was approached by a soothsayer that proclaimed Diocles would attain great power by slaying a boar. And prophecies never lie, they are just severed.
Oh, no. We've heard a prophecy, too. Especially of a hero.
As a diligent soldier, Probus allowed no idleness among his troops. If there were no barbarians to kill, then there were swamps to drain and farms to tend to.
Yes.
He extended that philosophy to the Praetorian Guard.
Stupid Praetorian Guard.
And to keep their treacherous tendencies in check, he appointed a man he highly trusted, Carus, as his Praetorian prefect. Probus then rode on, continuing to defend against barbarians from Rhaetia to the Nile, suppressing revolts from Hispania to Britannia, and ordering the ruins of the empire to be slowly rebuilt. And after celebrating a triumph, he sought to revive Aurelian's campaign against Rome's enemies, starting, as he did, against the Sassanids. And with the number of Rome's enemies already decreasing a lot, Probus expressed joy that perhaps one day Rome won't even need soldiers anymore.
No. A beautiful dream, but cannot be done.
An expression the Praetorians heard loud and clear. Already pissed at being forced to perform civic duty for once, and with the prospect of a peaceful future making their jobs obsolete, the Praetorian Guard then had Probus murdered.
No! You know, I got a real problem with this Praetorian Guard. Mark my words, you bastards are gonna get what's coming to you.
Even though he was about to give them the campaign they wanted. Soon. Very soon. They then acclaimed their prefect Carus as their emperor, yet another unwilling Augustus to add to the pile. And after having all of Probus' assassins executed and being too old to rule effectively, Carus elevated both of his sons, Carinus and Numerian, as Caesars, despite the weakness of the latter and debauchery of the former. In his reign, he would appoint Diocles as his cavalry commander, and consul to boot, serving together with a competent soldier, Maximian, who was also a really dumb politician, later sending Constantius to govern Dalmatia, the homeland of Diocles. Picking up where Probus left off, Carus marched east with Numerian to face off the Sassanids, while leaving the west at the hands of Carinus. And as he cleaned up frays from some barbarian invaders in the Sassanid Empire, Shapur's banishment made some weaker demons take his place, and when Carus invaded, he was met with little resistance, allowing him to take all of Mesopotamia, sack Ctesiphon, and cross the Tigris River. While in Rome, Carinus proved again that some apples can fall really fucking far from the tree. The minute he became emperor, he started punishing everyone he'd envied or didn't like, completely trashed the imperial palace, and married and divorced 9 different women, none of them his actual wife. Once Carus heard of his son's depravities, he declared his intent to substitute him with one of his best legates, Constantius Chlorus, yet another one of Aurelian's veterans.
Take that, Zenobia! Lousy reincarnation of Dido.
Having personally helped him crush the Palmyrene Empire.
Yes, take that, take that, take that! I see Aurelian right there. We're sorry we let you down, sir.
Constantius was well known for both his talent and loyalty. Acclaimed as Persicus Maximus, Carus prepared to venture even further than even Trajan did, and it was then that he was struck by lightning and died.
No!
For a competent emperor to incur divine wrath confused a lot of people, but not Commander Diocles, who was sure this must have been part of some grander divine plan. Convinced this was a sign to return home, Diocles convinced Numerian, guarded by his Praetorian prefect, to order them back to the empire. As they marched west, Aper told the legionnaires the emperor had suffered from an eye disease and had to be concealed from the light. So they kept on going, with Aper relaying ever more absurd orders in the emperor's name, while a foul stench arose, all making Diocles grow ever more suspicious. Breaking in to check on Numerian, he found the emperor's corpse rotting in a pool of his own blood, betrayed by the Praetorian Guard. Who could have guessed? Numerian's generals then had Aper seized, meeting together in Nicomedia to discuss what to do next.
Stupid Praetorian Guard. Someday. Some frickin' day.
And after realizing Carinus was now the sole emperor, the generals agreed that the greatest among them, Diocles, should rise to confront him. The generals and legions then gathered on a hill outside Nicomedia and proclaimed Diocles as Augustus. He accepted, drawing his sword towards the sun, renaming himself as Gaius Aurelius Valerius Diocletianus, and executing Aper for all to see. Aper, by the way, is Latin for boar. Told ya. Seeking to free the empire from the tyranny of Carus, Diocletian marched west, and Carus in turn marched east. Just then another usurper rose up in Pannonia, and man, what's with that fucking place and traitors? Well, anyway. Before Carus'
Yeah, Pannonia doesn't sound like a good place anyways.
overwhelming numbers faced off with Diocletian in Illyria, Constantius joined up with his brother in arms, helping him survive the initial battles. Carus, however, enjoyed the opposite situation, and legion after legion refused to fight for him, defecting to Diocletian's banner. And as he raged on, he was suddenly backstabbed by his Praetorian prefect, one of the many officers he had cucked. Emerging victorious as the sole ruler of the empire, and then immediately crushing the last barbarian horde still raiding the empire, Diocletian concluded Aurelian's legacy, officially putting an end to the crisis of the 3rd century. That didn't mean peace was assured, far from it. In fact, Diocletian's unending obsession throughout his reign would be to ensure nothing like the crisis ever happened again. The decades of torment had shaped Diocletian into a brilliant, yet cynical mind, and after seeing how irrelevant and unhelpful the Senate was during it all, he grew to despise it even more than Domitian, ignoring it completely. The age of Augustus's principate has ended. No longer would power be derived from the corrupted institutions of the Republic. Rome needed something more. Thus, the emperor's authority now derived from nothing else than divine right.
Yes.
The age of the dominant had dawned.
Yes!
Diocletian not as your princeps, your first citizen, but as Dominus, your lord and master. And to prevent the past from repeating itself, Diocletian concluded a single emperor could hardly rule effectively if the empire faced multiple threats at the same time. Diocletian knew only truly great men could rule over the whole Roman Empire. So to build a system where great men weren't needed, he chose to elevate his friend Maximian as Caesar, assuming the title of Jovius, another name for Jupiter, and Maximian taking the title of Herculius, the son of Jupiter. With two emperors to help each other, and their authority now emanating from divine right, Diocletian severely discouraged future usurpers from rising up as they used to. And with his rule consolidating, Diocletian's attention shifted to the Praetorian Guard. Oh, the Praetorian Guard. He detested them with the fury of 1,000 souls, but
Yes.
instead of killing them all, Diocletian felt more appropriate to humiliate them instead. All Praetorians were then kicked out of the imperial palace, cut down in both number and wealth, and sent to guard an irrelevant shithole of a fort in Rome, given no task but to see at how irrelevant they now were.
Yes!
Indeed, their treachery now only reached as far as the Milvian Bridge did, right beside the entrance to Rome. And for those of you who have kept this place in mind, keep keeping it. The discouragement, however, didn't include barbarians, forcing him to go crush some Sarmatians,
Good.
and later sending Maximian to Milan, where he was to rule the west and hunt down some bandits raiding central Gaul. Regarding the Sassanids, Diocletian had the weak demon king bow to his whim, making
Good.
him return Armenia and give up more of Mesopotamia.
Good!
And as he did, the Germans in the Rhine started naval expeditions of their own,
Stupid goddamn Germania!
sacking the Gallic coast, all while the Alemanni and Burgundians redestroyed the Limes Germanicus. So to deal with the pirates, Maximian sent his best naval officer, Carausius, while he fought the Germans on the land. Unfortunately, Carausius cared for nothing but gold, not only taking the wealth the Franks stole for himself, but outright letting the Germans pass by and sack entire towns,
Are you
just so he
serious?
could intercept them and take the raided wealth for himself. Horrified by this news, Maximian demanded Carausius should come back to him and answer for his crimes, which of course he refused, stealing the imperial fleet for himself, using the wealth to bribe the Britons to support him, allying with the Franks, helping them take over the Gallic coast and proclaiming himself Augustus of his
Son
new
of
Britannic
a
empire.
God-
A really dumb politician indeed. And no one was more pissed about this than Diocletian. The legitimacy of the diarchy at stake, Diocletian refused Carausius' demands to be legitimized, elevating Maximian as an Augustus to save his reputation, then coordinating with him to launch a counter-invasion, brutally ravaging Carausius' German allies.
Good.
Having helped him do so, Diocletian returned east again, got flanked by rude Sarmatians again, and crushed them again.
Good.
Maximian then built his own fleet, completely botched the invasion, and then blamed everything on the weather. Hearing the news, Diocletian sighed and marched west again, meeting with his co-emperor in Mediolanum, throwing a party to save Maximian's reputation and making sure to humiliate the Senate some more. But the diarchy wasn't working as it should. If one of the emperors needed help from the other, it left their part of the empire leaderless. And so, Diocletian doubled down on his new system, transforming the diarchy into the Tetrarchy, with the theme of 4 emperors, 1 empire. And he just had the right man in mind, his 2 veteran friends, Constantius and Galerius. The latter was then elevated as Caesar of the East by Diocletian, arranged to marry his daughter, and the former as Caesar of the West by Maximian, who had already divorced his wife and married Maximian's daughter. So here's Diocletian's Tetrarchy, one empire, ruled by 2 senior Augusti, with 2 junior Caesars to serve as heirs and rule the shit provinces. Each had their own capital, borders didn't mean shit really, they pretty much just did whatever Diocletian told them to, and once the Augusti died, the Caesars would take over their place, and 2 new Caesars would be chosen. You'll notice the senators completely powerless over here, where they belong.
Bye-bye,
Since they
senators.
were all one big family now, Diocletian hosted both of Constantius's and Maximian's sons in his court, among them an ambitious little cunt, Maxentius. He then sent Galerius to go crush a revolt in the Nile, and then Constantius to go put down Carausius' revolt. Being granted the hardest task in the empire, and seeing the port of Bononia was the main base of Carausius' fleet, Constantius first cleared the Gallic coast of the Franks, then laid siege to Bononia, making his legions build a dam over the port, denying it any relief, and forcing them to surrender. With his Brittonic empire now crumbling, Carausius was then murdered by his praetorian prefect, Allectus. Nah, just kidding, he was his finance minister of all people, but who cares. Constantius then built a fleet, invaded, and had Allectus killed as well. With their partners in crime now dead, the Franks were let off the leash and started slaughtering all innocent civilians around them. As they marched south to sack Londinium, Constantius halted them, completely exterminating every last Frank, and when he turned to start what was gonna be a brutal siege for Londinium, the local Brits received him as their hero, acclaiming him as the restorer of eternal light, Reditor Lucis Aeterna. The Reditor Constantius then returned to Trier in the Rhine, while his Augustus Maximian was fighting Frankish pirates that had gotten all the way to Numidia, germs in North Africa. Imagine that. And after dealing with some Berber barbarians in the mountains, we get to what most defined Diocletian's reign. Reforms, and a fuckload of reforms. Starting off, not only did Diocletian more than double the number of imperial provinces, but his new system of dioceses would be stolen by the Christians of all people. The governor of each diocese not only now ruled over less resources, but the soldiers in his lands were now led by another dude, the Dux. In fact, Diocletian made it so bureaucratic and military careers were permanently distinguished from each other. And speaking of the legions, Diocletian also got rid of the old cohort system as a whole, basing much of his thinking from what emperors like Gallienus had to endure. The barbarian invasions were now too big for 5,000-man strong legions sparsely placed to deal with. So he did 2 things. 1. He hugely increased the size of the army from 390,000 men to 580,000 men, most of them stationed in the east. The navy got a bump as well. And 2. The Roman army now displayed 2 main units, the Limitani Ripensis, plebs that guarded the frontiers part-time, and the New Legion, the Comitatensis, making up nimbler units of 1,000 men each and supported with a lot of cavalry. The legions were now far more mobile and practical, so much so Diocletian built some 20 new legions, and inspired by Aurelian's walls, every major city across the empire began building walls of their own.
Good.
In this new system, with the Limitani defending the borders, small invaders were easily repelled, and large invasions were both spotted and relayed to other troops. Once the big barbarian hordes broke through, they would be unable to break through the nearest city walls, lacking siege weapons and all, getting harassed by local forces until the nearest emperor had time to muster the legions and kick the barbarians back to their mudholes. Defense in death, we now call it.
I love it. I love it already. And everything's gonna be fine. And Rome will not fall.
Common strategy for large empires, and this was all terribly expensive as well. So to collect the taxes to pay for it all, Diocletian sent his agents to perform the first empire-wide census in history, cataloging every last property, land, pleb and patrician there was, figuring out how much each citizen could provide. Sadly, the denarii by that point was utterly worthless, so Diocletian issued new coins, among them a new gold coin, the solidus, the gold coin, the one everyone and their peasant mother would copy for millennia. It would take a while until the monetary reforms took effect, so Diocletian had his new army of bureaucrats to come up with an equivalence chart of items to temporarily replace currency. When the tax collectors came, the plebs were allowed to pay with anything, foods, goods, their mother, whatever they had. And part and parcel of Diocletian's enlightened autocracy, he standardized Rome's taxation system on all provinces, meaning that Italy, long exempt from taxes, now paid as much as Illyrian provincials and the like did. only Rome remained safe from this, as despite of the Senate, Diocletian still respected the Eternal City. But as you likely gathered, he didn't care for plebs at all. In fact, in order to further stabilize the empire, Diocletian transformed the plebs into proto-peasants, serfs, if you will. They were now tied to their land, and get this, permanently changed to hereditary professions. The plebs were now to inherit their father's profession, and never be allowed to quit. A reform done so that the empire would never run short of crucial professions. While these reforms tackled pretty much all problems inherent of the 3rd century, inflation still ran rampant, and man, did that ever trigger Diocletian. Such inflation forced his own soldiers to blow their entire savings just to live another day, and every time he was reminded of this injustice, it enraged him deeply. And who did he blame? None other than the merchants. None of them Jewish though. Hadrian really didn't mess around. And so to fight this injustice, Diocletian wrote a fucking huge book, listing every single item that could be sold in the empire and establishing a maximum price it could be sold for. But no one paid heed to it, even if the death penalty was at stake. Alas, the world just wasn't ready for the full force of Diocletian's reforming genius. And with, say, most of his reforms an astounding success, Diocletian then went to fight against some other Sarmatian invasion, again.
Another invasion? What is up?
This time annihilating them so hard they pretty much stopped being an issue, calling himself Sarmaticus Maximus and building a series of forts to strengthen the Danube, with 15 legions worth of Limitani to guard it, which was much easier now without Dacius sticking out into the Carpathian Mountains. Meanwhile, Galerius was finishing crushing some wee wuzzers down the Nile, then went to Syria to face the renewed Sassanid threat, none other than Shapur's own son.
The legacy of Shapur.
Narse. Yes, the demon had laid eggs before his banishment, ensuring that his demonic line would continue tormenting the world. And after usurping power from the weaker demons, Narse sought to restore his father's reign of terror, invading Armenia and then the empire, and say it with me, slaughtering everyone on his path. Galerius then went to stop him at Carrhae, but was completely overwhelmed by his endless hordes of evil. Barely managing to return safely from the battle, he was met by one furious Diocletian. For having disgraced Rome, Diocletian made his junior Caesar march a mile on foot throughout the desert sun. And having punished him so, he granted him some reinforcements to invade for Armenia this time, cucking Narse's cavalry in the mountains and beating him back. The Sassanids then camped away to recover, only to be caught by surprise by Galerius, forcing the demon to flee in panic, letting his soldiers, wife, and harem of chaos.
Oh, demon women. They'll take advantage of your seed. Look out. Stay away. It's gonna take advantage of you.
To be captured alive by Galerius.
Evil tits are... Well, okay, he's kind of right.
The Romans then marched south and sacked Ctesiphon for, what, the 6th time now? I lost count. Diocletian and Galerius then got Narse to agree meeting up and discuss terms of peace. And get this, the Sassanids started out by demanding the Romans to be magnanimous in victory, which just made Diocletian explode in anger. It was only after beating all of Narse's minions to death with Valyrian skeleton that he was able to get his point across. The emperors then humiliated the Sassanids, retaking Armenia, expanding on Mesopotamia, and setting the Sassanid borders under permanent Roman occupation, ensuring peace for the next 30 years. And to thank for their efforts, Egypt threw a big revolt. It's simple really. With Diocletian now cracking hard on the ancient Egyptian tradition of tax evasion, they revolted under a dude whose name I won't even bother you with. After pacifying the countryside, Diocletian personally sieged Alexandria for 9 gruesome months. After finally breaching in, Diocletian vowed to go full Caracalla on Alexandria until the blood reached his horse's knees, which was when his horse lay down on a pool of blood. As a pious man, Diocletian took the hint, and was merciful instead, ending with the citizens of Alexandria erecting a statue in Diocletian's horse's honor.
As it should be.
The two emperors then went to Antioch to attend a spiritual sacrifice, but as the priests carved into the animal's entrails to read the god's words, they couldn't find anything. And when they were questioned what the problem was, he said that the Christians were fucking with his sacrifice. And yeah, they were. Furious at their
I knew it. They were behind it the whole time.
Impiety, and as Diocletian revived Decius' edict against Christians, he saw yet another foul cult arise. Manichaeism. Seeing it for the demonic Persian chaos cult it was, Diocletian ordered all Manichaeists to be persecuted, destroying their temples, burning their religious texts, and executing.
Oh, hey! I actually have the Robert Baratheon Warhammer. I love that.
Executing every last one of them. And you know what? It worked. Manichaeism never grew too big and it was eventually eradicated from the empire, which gave both emperors some ideas.
Praise
to
Sol.
decide what they should do, both emperors went to visit the Oracle of Apollo, one of the purest aspects of Sol Invictus. But he was unable to help them, claiming that the impiety of the world had blinded him. For both emperors, enough was enough. For centuries the Christians shunned Rome's gods, defied its emperors, and set fire to everything else. They deserved nothing less than a great persecution. 1, 2, 3, and go. Diocletian then wrote his edicts. By imperial decree, all churches, temples, texts, wealth, and rights were destroyed across the empire. But the Christians didn't comply, and as punishment, the Christians were fined, demoted, deposed, jailed, and exiled in the army and state. Now bitchier than ever, true to Christ-cook tradition, they complained, lied, disobeyed, profaned, revolted, and hid no matter the cost. Despite Diocletian's mercy, the Christians tore the edicts from the streets and set fire to the imperial palace. Twice. The Christians had broken the law, ancient Roman virtues, and by then, Diocletian's patience. All lawbreakers were executed, and emperors ordered to kill, jail, flog, nail, cleave, flay, and torture every last Christian that disobeyed. Salt was rubbed in their wounds, forced to kneel to Rome's deities, and gouged, impaled, threatened, depraved, and injured in every way. Their leadership was devastated, and Diocletian made it law to kill, jail, flog, nail, cleave, hang, flay, torture, gouge, impale, threaten, deprave, bruise, stamp, injure, behead, mutilate, destroy, whip, tear, strike, cut, savage, wound, exile, sack, menace, and burn every single law-breaking Christian.
We're listening to it again. One more time.
Fire to everything else. They deserved nothing less than a great persecution. 1, 2, 3, and go. Diocletian then wrote his edicts. By imperial decree, all churches, temples, texts, wealth, and rights were destroyed across the empire. But the Christians didn't comply, and as punishment, the Christians were fined, demoted, deposed, jailed, and exiled in the army and state. Now bitchier than ever, true to Christ-cook tradition, they complained, lied, disobeyed, profaned, revolted, and hid no matter the cost. Despite Diocletian's mercy, the Christians tore the edicts from the streets and set fire to the imperial palace. Twice. The Christians had broken the law, ancient Roman virtues, and by then, Diocletian's patience. All lawbreakers were executed, and emperors ordered to kill, jail, flog, nail, cleave, flay, and torture every last Christian that disobeyed. Salt was rubbed in their wounds, forced to kneel to Rome's deities, and gouged, impaled, threatened, depraved, and injured in every way. Their leadership was devastated, and Diocletian made it law to kill, jail, flog, nail, cleave, hang, flay, torture, gouge, impale, threaten, deprave, bruise, stamp, injure, behead, mutilate, destroy, whip, tear, strike, cut, savage, wound, exile, sack, menace, and burn every single law-breaking Christian.
Beautiful.
Thousands of Christians lie dead, their leadership gutted, and churches destroyed. But in the end, it was too little, too late. The Christians continued proliferating, disobeying edicts, bribing off authorities, and overall negating all of the persecution's achievements. Diocletian and Galerius had killed many Christians, but at the end of the day, that's all they accomplished. Constantius had predicted the persecution's failure, so he never invested too heavily on it. Maximian did though, but he was nevertheless unsuccessful as well. To calm down, Maximian celebrated their 20 years of co-rule by bringing Diocletian for his first ever official visit to the Eternal City. And in his honor, Maximian ordered built and Diocletian finished building the Baths of Diocletian, yet another massive bathing complex. It fit well with the massive palace he built back in Dalmatia too, more on that later. But try as he might to chill, Diocletian couldn't stop noticing how Rome had degenerated from the days.
Come on, hottie. One Salinas for all the known STDs. Bargaining price.
She's taking advantage of you. Stay away.
Of old. When he looked at the streets, all he saw were them filled with dirty plebs, adulterous whores, spreading Christ
Betray your wife over here.
cookery, and corrupt praetorians just looking for someone regal to stab. Enraged, Diocletian cut his visit short, refusing to attend his 9th consulship ceremony, already knowing the state the Senate would be in. He then returned east, helping Galerius to defend against a small Dacian invasion. But as he assisted him, Diocletian developed a crippling illness. He then returned to Nicomedia, opening a circus built in his honor, and then secluding himself in his palace, growing ever weaker.
No.
When everyone grew to assume he had died, Diocletian reappeared, an unrecognizable shadow of his former self. Diocletian then gathered his men on the very same hill he was in 2 decades ago to proclaim his resignation.
What?
First emperor to do so. Having become too weak to rule, he vowed to step out so that the younger Caesars could take over, convincing Maximian to do the same, though he really didn't want to. Diocletian then elevated Galerius to the position of Augustus, as did Maximian to Constantius, and to fill up the 2 vacant Caesar slots, Maximinus and Constantius' sons were ignored. Maxentius was one of those little shits that could never be trusted with power, but it was Constantius' son that Diocletian was most concerned with. It was then left to Galerius to pick to the next Caesars, choosing an old military friend of his, Valerius Severus, yet another non-Severan, and also his own nephew, Dia. The Tetrarchy now, formally, looked like this, but really was more like this right now. Here's the new Caesars not quite yet in power, there's Maximian and Maxentius left out, and here is Diocletian, spending his retirement in his Dalmatian homeland, cultivating the noblest of all vegetables, cabbages.
Hey.
And in the west,
I'm growing tomatoes. Hey, and tomatoes are fruit, not a vegetable. Fight me.
Constantius ruled on, crushing even more germs on the Rhine and humiliating the Picts beyond the wall, setting a base in Eboracum, modern York, and getting acclaimed as Britannicus Maximus. But Constantius' time was also at an end. Nearing his death, he called upon his soldiers to gather around him and listen to his last wishes. And the words that Constantius then uttered would change Rome and the world forever.
Ooh. I wonder who that could be. Now, to be clear here, I don't know who this person is or what they are all about. But clearly the son of Constantius seems like an honorable man, and dare I say it, his name might shake the foundations of the world. However, if I were just some simple advisor, I would maybe just say, excuse me, son of Constantius, you should look at that city Byzantium. I mean, it's a great city, but it could be greater. And with a slight name change, it would be great. I don't know if that will happen, but boy, oh boy, what a sight that would be. As always, folks, we here at Americans Learn encourage all of you to please support the original content creator, Nova Hattie, as you should. The original link to this video is in the description box below. And as for you backstabbing scum Praetorian Guard, soon. You're going to get what's coming to you. And RIP to Aurelian. We could not save you, sir. We failed you. But perhaps, maybe, we can give you justice.